Imagine a place where alliances shift overnight, where leaders speak of peace but silently prepare missiles. Now, imagine all of this was foretold thousands of years ago. The world calls it Iran, the Bible calls it Persia, and what it reveals is chilling. From hero to enemy, from liberator of God's people, to the centerpiece of a prophetic war that is yet to unfold. Have you ever heard of Gog and Magog? What if I told you that Iran might be part of this dark coalition about to move against Israel, just as prophesied in the very book of Revelation? But before the judgment, there was an alliance. Before the threat, there was a promise. Today, you'll discover why Iran is not just another nation in conflict, but a missing link between a glorious past and the prophetic end the Bible outlined with precision. Stay with me until the end, because what's about to be revealed could change how you see the present, the future, and the divine plan behind it all. Few men crossed empires with such integrity and influence as Daniel. While kings came and went, he remained, not out of convenience, but out of conviction. The truth is, Daniel didn't just survive the fall of Babylon. He became a living spiritual link between the justice that judged one empire and the restoration that would rise with another. The Bible reveals him as a man who interpreted kings' dreams and silenced hungry lions through the power of faith. In times of political apocalypse, he was a beacon of stability, and that says a lot about what it means to carry a calling greater than your surroundings. Imagine, just for a moment, someone today leaving a corrupt company and being called into a position of trust in government, without changing their faith, without compromising their principles, yet gaining authority because of their integrity. That was Daniel. He didn't use truth as a weapon, but as a bridge. And that's exactly what we see when discreet yet faithful Christian leaders occupy strategic spaces in multinational corporations or even in regimes hostile to the faith. The lesson: lasting influence isn't earned through noise, but through quiet strength in chaotic times. And there's something even deeper going on. Daniel was a prophet of transition between the judgment of one empire and the hope of the next. Between the weight of Babylon and the promise of Persia, he became a kind of living code, revealing a truth that only the Bible can explain. God doesn't just judge, he also restores, and sometimes the one who's faithful in the fire of an oppressive system will also become the channel of grace in the next. But this tension between judgment and redemption is about to intensify in a far more complex scenario. It's curious to think that while the teachers of the law ignored the signs, it was the Magi from distant Persia who recognized the birth of the Messiah. They did not come empty-handed. They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, ancient symbols, but with a message that still lives today. These gifts were not mere noble offerings, but prophetic declarations. Jesus was king, was God, and would be sacrifice. A truth revealed by foreigners, while the very owners of the prophecies remained blind. And this leads us to an uncomfortable question. Isn't it possible that even today, people outside our religious world see more clearly than many within it? Now think about the current context. In times of war, fear, or pandemics, what do people turn to? Symbols, amulets, crosses, open psalms on the shelf. They seek what transcends. And the Persian Magi understood this millennia ago. They were saying, "We know who he is." How many times, in moments of pain, have you held on to something symbolic that brought peace? A family ring, a verse from Psalm 91, a memory of someone who prayed for you. Symbols don't have power in themselves, but they point to greater truths. Just like the Magi's gifts, they remind us that even in chaos, there is purpose, and someone's personal apocalypse can also be the beginning of their revelation. And there's one more detail no one talks about. These Magi were Persians. They represented ancient Iran, a people who, behind the curtains of history, already carried a rare spiritual sensitivity. What does that teach us? That God speaks even where religion doesn't reach. That the Bible reveals, in its details, a prophetic Iran full of nuances. And that may be the same Iran that once gifted the child God with eternal symbols might also be present in future chapters we still don't fully understand. Iran, or Persia, is never portrayed superficially in the Bible. It is, at once, liberator and adversary, God's tool and eschatological figure. And that's unsettling, because we're used to simple narratives, heroes on one side, villains on the other. But Iran forces us to face the truth that human beings, like nations, can be both light and darkness in the same body. The Bible doesn't hide that, it reveals it. And the apocalypse is not the end of the world, it's the unveiling of this duality that lives within us all. Who hasn't known someone who did good yesterday and stumbled badly today? A pastor who fell, a politician who started with good intentions and lost his way. Or even ourselves saying yes to God one day and falling into crisis the next. That's why biblical Iran teaches us more about the human soul than about geopolitics. It reflects us, a mirror that reveals the cracks, but also the potential for rebuilding. And here's something precious. God works through paradoxes. He doesn't discard cracked clay, he reshapes it. And here's a mystery. The same nation that freed God's people through Cyrus will also be tied to the end-time alliances against Israel. What does that mean? That redemption and judgment can exist in the same script. That the line between light and shadow is thin, and that what looks like an enemy today might be an instrument of salvation tomorrow. Iran, in that sense, is a living character in the Bible. And perhaps its complexity is only the beginning of an even greater prophetic story. Few people notice, but Persia, modern-day Iran, appears right at the beginning of the Bible, among the descendants of Noah. Madai and Elam are not just names buried in ancient genealogies. They are the foundation of a civilization that would cross centuries and eventually become a key player in the gears of the apocalypse. The truth revealed here is striking. The story doesn't begin with the end. It begins with a seed, and the Bible plants that seed in Genesis, as if already preparing us for a conclusion that will be anything but simple. There's a hidden code in all of this, and only the attentive will perceive it. The same Persia that shows up in the early days resurfaces in the prophets, and then again in the visions of the end times. This is not coincidence, it's intentional. It's as if God is signaling that some nations are not just part of history, they are history. The Persian duality is not a narrative flaw, it's part of the divine plan. A people who were once a blessing and will also become a piece in the eschatological landscape of judgment. And in that contrast lies a lesson about human truth. We are all capable of freeing or destroying. This forces us to reflect on how we see the world today. How often do we judge nations, religions, or individuals without understanding the role they've played, or will still play, in God's divine plan? Today's Iran, so involved in tensions and shadows, is also the heir of a lineage that was present at the very birth of faith. The same blood that walked with the Magi toward Bethlehem may be silently moving once again in the unfolding scene of the coming apocalypse. Long before Babylon fell, God had already revealed through Isaiah and Jeremiah that Persia would be an instrument in his hands, and not just any instrument. A pagan empire with its own gods would become the divine answer to the cry of a captive people. The prophecy was clear, but it seemed absurd. Who could have imagined that ancient Iran, under the crown of Cyrus, would hold the key to liberation? And yet, the Bible revealed it, and time fulfilled it. A startling truth. God can use those no one expects, even those outside our religious bubble. The decree of Cyrus, setting the Jews free and ordering the rebuilding of the temple, wasn't just a political act. It was a prophetic proclamation that tore through the heavens and touched the earth. Think about it, a foreign king, with no ties to Jewish faith, declaring that the God of Israel had given him authority to act. That shatters every religious logic. But that's exactly where the apocalypse begins to take shape. When God moves outside our categories. How many times today do secular leaders end up being the answer to prayers no one believed in anymore? This isn't a coincidence. It's a biblical pattern. And perhaps the most surprising thing is realizing that Persia didn't have to become converted to be used by God. It was used as it was, imperfect, pagan, but available. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How many people have we dismissed for not seeming religious enough are actually being instruments of redemption behind the scenes? The story of Cyrus didn't end there. It still echoes, subtly, in future prophecies that tie Iran to the final stage of humanity. She was an orphan, hidden among the exiled people, with no titles or status, yet her name would echo through the most powerful throne of the time, Esther. And here, Iran, ancient Persia, once again becomes the stage for a story woven with redemption, risk, and divine providence. The hidden truth in this narrative is that God, once again, was working through an unlikely empire. Esther wasn't just a beautiful queen, she was a bridge, a divine answer within a system that seemed completely opposed. And the most fascinating part, no visible miracle, just silent providence, just like today. How many Esthers are out there right now, in companies, governments, or institutions, without even realizing they carry a mission? Maybe you know someone who seems out of place in their environment, but was positioned there for a greater purpose. Esther teaches us that influence doesn't depend on a religious platform, but on sensitivity to the right moment. When the apocalypse seemed about to fall upon the Jews, it was she, hidden in the Persian palace, who rose up. And today, does God still raise people in strategic environments that we, from the outside, would never consider? What's even more unsettling is that this story took place in the very land we now call Iran, a territory seen by many as a threat, yet one that holds in its spiritual memory moments of deep protection over God's people. The Bible doesn't erase that history, it reveals it. And maybe that's why, in every chapter of the Persian past, we find a reflection of what's to come. Because before we speak of the coming apocalypse, we need to understand the roots that precede it. In Daniel's chilling visions, Persia doesn't appear as a stable ally, but as a powerful creature, a ram with two horns. The image is symbolic, yet full of hidden truth. An empire divided in strength and purpose, yet still dominant, until it's defeated by a goat coming from the west, representing Greece. The Bible isn't just telling history here, it's revealing cycles of power, downfall, and replacement. The apocalypse is not just a future event, it's a repetition of patterns that already began long ago. That Persian ram, strong and confident, was suddenly defeated. And that makes us wonder, how many structures today, political, spiritual, or even personal, seem invincible, but are one step away from collapse? How often do we invest too much energy into systems that look solid, but have no eternal root? Daniel's visions were not random predictions, they were warnings, and Iran is once again at the center of this scenario, not as a fixed villain, but as a prophetic gear in motion, a reminder that the great empires of yesterday always return to the stage. Perhaps the most provocative detail is that Daniel saw all of this while still living under Persian rule. He interpreted dreams, but he also dreamed. He dreamed of a time when kingdoms would fall, one after another, until the eternal kingdom would come. And if that's true, and the Bible assures us it is, then the pieces Daniel saw are still in motion. Ancient Persia, today's Iran, is still one of them. A piece that silently continues to be shaped for a stage where the final scene has yet to be played. It was they, the Persian Magi, who followed a star. They weren't Jews. They weren't priests. But they understood signs that others ignored. And when they reached Bethlehem, they found not just a child, but the fulfillment of an ancient promise. The truth, once again, was revealed through an unexpected path. Ancient Iran recognizing the Messiah before the religious leaders themselves did. And that teaches us something profound. Revelation is not about geographical closeness to God. It's about spiritual sensitivity. The most surprising part is how these Magi likely deciphered the prophecies left by Daniel, who lived in the heart of Persia. In other words, centuries later, the seed planted by a prophet in a foreign land blossomed into wisdom. And today, how many seeds of faith are you planting in the places you frequent? A conversation, a testimony, a simple gesture could, years later, become the map someone follows to find the truth. The Bible reminds us, nothing is by chance. Even silence has echoes. And look at the divine irony. The East, a place many today associate with mysticism or opposition to Christianity, was exactly where the first worshippers of the king came from. That says a lot about biblical Iran. It's not only part of the final apocalypse, it was part of the beginning of the messianic revelation. And if it happened once, why couldn't it happen again? Sometimes, the key to the future is hidden in the past, and the eyes that see beyond appearances are the ones that come closest to prophecy. In the book of Ezekiel, a disturbing scene emerges. A coalition of nations rises against Israel, led by an enigmatic figure, Gog. Among the allies in this offensive, there it is once again, Iran, the ancient Persian Empire. A detail overlooked by many, yet deliberately revealed by the Bible. The truth, though hidden, screams through the lines. Iran will play a role in the final judgment, not as the sole protagonist, but as part of a global mechanism that will culminate in a visible apocalypse. What's most intriguing is how the prophecy describes the outcome. God himself intervenes, with earthquakes, plagues, and judgment upon the invaders. But why allow Persia to be part of that army? Why let it align with forces that defy the people of God? The answer may not be comfortable, but it's biblical. There are divine purposes, even in the darkest alliances. And how often does this happen in our own lives? Situations that seem unfair, unexpected betrayals, inevitable confrontations. And yet, there is an invisible hand guiding everything towards something greater. And even though this scenario sounds grim, it doesn't end in total ruin. The coalition is destroyed, but Persia's story doesn't end there. Judgment is not a full stop, it's a comma. And that prepares us for something few people see when they talk about the apocalypse. There is redemption, even for those who were instruments of judgment. There is an echo of hope, and it begins to be heard more clearly in the writings of a forgotten prophet who carries a profound revelation about Iran's ultimate destiny. When Jeremiah lifted his voice, he didn't spare ancient Elam, territory we now call Iran. He spoke of war, dispersion, and sorrow, but in a divine whisper he let slip a promise most people overlook. In the latter days, says the Lord, I will bring back the captives of Elam. The truth revealed here dismantles any fatalistic view of the apocalypse. The Bible shows that judgment may be severe, but it is not eternal. There is a rising light even for those who once walked through darkness. Think about that in everyday life. How many people do you know who've gone through a personal end of the world, a divorce, a bankruptcy, a scandal, and later re-emerged with renewed purpose? Prophetic Iran is that mirror on a national scale. It carries scars, but also seeds of restoration. History itself shows underground revivals there, house churches growing in silence, lives being transformed where official religion cannot reach. It's a reminder that grace and judgment walk hand in hand, revealing paradoxes only God can weave. And here lies the mystery that still pulses between the lines of the apocalypse. If God plans to restore Elam, what other plot twists await us? Perhaps today's antagonist is tomorrow's messenger. Perhaps the nation seen as a threat holds hidden codes of hope for the days to come. The Bible leaves clues, and the truth continues to unfold step by step. Because in God's script, the final chapter is never just ruin, it's redemption waiting to happen. Now that you've discovered all this, what will you do with this truth? Will you ignore it as if it's just another biblical curiosity? Or will you face the fact that even Iran, with all its complexity, has a role in the divine plan? And maybe, so do you. The apocalypse isn't just a future event, it's a present calling. Are you ready? Have you been seeking discernment, or just repeating what you hear? Share in the comments. What surprised you most in this content? Which part sparked something inside you? Let's talk about it. And if you want to keep learning these truths revealed by the Bible, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there's still so much hidden, and we're going to reveal it together.